Okay. I think we should be live here any second,
Okay.
which it always surprises me that it starts going live earlier than I'm aware of. But if you check my personal profile page, we are live now. So I'm going to go ahead and share this to my fan page, and if y'all want to share,
Share.
we'll be good to go. And I'll keep this up for comments if people want to post questions, comments, thoughts, ideas. I'll have this up. So
Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Whoops, I just posted it to the wrong people.
I don't know.
we're so old. We are so old. We're like, wait a minute. How does this work? Well, I will say welcome to another episode of Under the Hood. And today I am so thrilled to be joined by my good friends, David and Lelia Sadlier, who we met when we were all students together at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana.
Like 5 years.
5 years ago. It was just just the other day. Just
amazing how that happened.
In a blink of an eye, right? It's kind of crazy how quickly time passes, and yet strong memories are still present. And it kind of bizarrely does feel like it was only 5 years ago. When you said that, I almost went like, wait, no, that was more than 5 years ago. Like
Wait a second.
Wait a minute. But for all of us, our musical journey started long before that. So Lelia, why don't we start with you? Because I mean, I've been jealous of David for a number of reasons, but how insanely amazing is it to have a life partner who you can make music with, right? Who can collaborate together and do recitals and stuff together, and it's kind of amazing. So Lelia, when did you start playing piano? How did you get into playing the piano? Talk to us a little bit about that journey.
I will point out one thing before that. My wonderful teacher from Eastman, Melita True, when I told her I was married to a singer, she said, "Oh, aren't you so lucky?" So it actually works both ways.
Yes.
I don't want him to get
Of course.
Victory is mine.
I will say she is the first and only person that has ever said that to me. Usually the singers are like, "Yeah, aren't you lucky?" But so I started playing piano when I was 3.
Okay.
So pianists have a very different musical journey than singers typically.
Sure.
You will have the rare bird who started later, who started maybe even in their teens, but most of us start somewhere between 3 and 6.
And I would say that's probably true for most instrumentalists in general that pursue or that have that passion to pursue a performing career or whose parents want them to. I mean, I can't imagine at 3 you were like, this is what I want to do.
Apparently I went over to a piano at somebody's house and I just started picking out little nursery tunes, and the lady told my mother that she had to give me piano lessons, and so my mother decided to do that. And I was playing so many things by ear that a couple of piano teachers would not accept me. They said she'll never learn how to read music. It was really silly. But she won't learn how to read music because she plays everything by ear. Of course, now I wish I had developed that skill set. In hindsight, a lot more. But we work so hard to read every single note and play every single note as perfectly as possible. When really it's, sometimes healthier just to be able to sort of let it go.
Right.
But, yeah. So I started very young. I did a lot very, very young. I performed with the symphony when I was 9 or 10.
Which symphony?
New Orleans Symphony.
New Orleans Symphony, because you're from New Orleans.
I am. And the cat that has adopted us.
This is a neighborhood cat that just adopted us, and she now is with us pretty much 24/7.
I love that we are outside sitting around a campfire.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Totally.
This is our fireside chat.
Yes.
With the cat and the dog. So yeah, I did a lot. I did a lot of competitions. I had wonderful teachers. I excelled at what I did. And I got into Eastman with pretty much a full scholarship when I was 15. So I actually am a high school dropout.
You're a high school dropout?
Yes. I'm a high school dropout who has a doctorate, but I did drop out of high school to go.
I assume at some point you got your GED.
I didn't have to. My
Really?
mother made me.
How did you get into Eastman without a?
They didn't care.
Chops.
You were like,
No.
you have magical fingers. Done.
I think it's a different world now. And I'm, honestly, I don't know if it even matters now. I actually had a friend at Tanglewood this summer. I decided to do that, who was going to Eastman at that age. And I'm like, you can do that? Like I didn't know either. And I went and talked to the admissions counselor who was at Tanglewood sort of recruiting. He's like, yep, please apply. And so I did. And I was there doing piano performance for 4 years. And then went on to Juilliard for my master's with Emmanuel Axe. And that was, quite an experience. But at a certain point, I kind of recognized that being a concert pianist was not the path that I wanted to take. I didn't like, the idea of living in a hotel room and that much practice, to be honest.
Yeah.
And, frankly, it's a really difficult career to break into and to then maintain. And it just didn't seem like the best fit. So I ended up moving back to New Orleans, and I was teaching at Loyola University. I was at University of New Orleans. I got thrown in front of a theory class, having never taught a class or a theory class in my life. I hadn't even taken theory at Juilliard. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? And it was trial by fire. But as I got more used to it, I found that I really, really liked it. And to complete the story, Dave was actually in my first theory class.
Aha! I told you you were going to.
I remember I was
teacher relationship.
I listened to a lot of Van Halen that semester. A lot.
Dude. One of my favorite songs.
Ever. Come on.
So,
oh my God.
Remember, I was younger, because I went to college younger. So I was very young teaching.
Right.
And so that is where we met. And that is where I said, you need to not be in my class anymore before we can take things any further with anything.
So let's back up just a little bit, because what we like to talk about on this show is sort of the challenges and the struggles that we have technically throughout our education. And also those sort of light bulb moments where it's like, oh, well, if I think of it that way, then everything kind of starts to click. So, I mean, for a child making your symphony debut in New Orleans Symphony at age 9 or 10, or whatever it was, do you remember back when you were sort of establishing your technique, and did that feel different to you than, like, sitting down to play the piano? I would imagine at that age, you were like, oh, okay, what do I do? And then I'm imagining that, your teacher would give you exercises and talk to you about, of course, hand positions and so forth. But did you have struggles or challenges in learning that technique that led you to become that concert pianist at such a young age?
Well, actually, that performance with the symphony, soon thereafter, I switched teachers, and I switched to a Russian woman who is absolutely spectacularly brilliant. And she gifted me with some of the greatest technical gifts that you could possibly. I mean, she was fierce. She was tough. Lily, why for you do that? No, it's terrible. Like really just. I'm like 11. Okay. But
what help us understand what were you doing, and then what did she help you learn to do better that really changed the way you were playing?
So I had probably a very nice hand position, because my teacher before was also wonderful. But there was some tension and some different things. And I just will never forget how all these lessons with Faina Lushtak, that's her name, coming over and swatting me, like not swatting, but, making sure that my wrist was loose, and just making sure that everything up here was organically working. And it was something that I had never thought about. I had never, it hadn't been addressed in that way before. So she gave me that wonderful gift. And even at IU, working with my teacher there, every once in a while he'd be like, just use your Russian technique. You know? Like, oh, okay. Because that, and in fact, it was at IU where I really had, okay, so I'll give you my several revelations. At Juilliard, I used to just, like, oh, a teacher would tell me to do a different fingering, and I'm like, well, mine's working pretty well. I'll just keep practicing my fingering, and they won't know. And they never did until I hit Juilliard, and my teacher there said, you know, I've recorded this piece and performed it a number of times, and I really think you should try the fingering that I gave you last week. I was like,
oh,
okay.
You can tell that I'm not.
Yeah. And what else did he say at one point? I said, I can do this. I know I can do it. He's like, well, if you could do it, you would be doing it right now. So I've had a lot of tough love, and I still teach probably in a similar way.
Yeah.
But when I got to Indiana, Edmund Battersby was not, he was so kind and gentle with me, and makes me, because he passed away way too early.
Yeah.
But he gave me the beauty in the sound.
Yeah.
That I hadn't had before. And so a different way of approaching the keys between he and Leonard Hokinson, who's one of the greatest collaborative pianists.
One of the best classes I ever took was that collaborative piano class.
Come on, that was the best class.
And you remember sitting in that class, and all the pianists, you know, he would get to play, and that was horrible instrument up there on the fourth fret, like this piece of garbage Steinway. I mean, it was a Steinway, but it was a piece of garbage. It was a very old one, yeah. It had been beaten into oblivion. And, you know, we'd play it, we're like, oh my gosh, he is doing this, you know, all these complaints. And he would sit there, and he would start playing, and you're like, oh my God, it sounds like $1 million instrument. And we're all staring, we're looking to see if he's like, what he's doing with the pedal and stuff. And of course, he has his legs crossed, he's not even using the pedal at all. So yeah, just this sort of like magical way of making sound. And what teacher told me that
that's what Edmund Battersby called, everyone called him teacher. Well, that's a whole other story. But so that's what you should talk about.
So what teacher said was that, you know, everyone thinks of technique as being fast fingers and, you know, being accurate and, you know, big octaves and whatever. He's like, no, it takes as much, if not more, technique to be able to play beautifully or to be able to sing when you play. And it's so true. It came out to me, I was performing Rhapsody in Blue, and I had just done another concert of Schumann before that, a few weeks before. And an administrator that I was working with was so over the moon with the Rhapsody in Blue, like thought it was the greatest thing. But with the Schumann, he was like, you know. I tell you, you can have a not so great kind of subpar pianist make Rhapsody in Blues sound fun and good and engaging and everything. And you put that same pianist on Schumann, and it's going to be a disaster.
Right, right.
So, you know, it was just a very interesting change of perspective and a change of idea and a change of values, really, to be honest. Like,
through the different teachers.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm glad that I had all the perspectives. But
yeah, I mean, what I was just going to say, what an incredible balance that you get when you have sort of the technical proficiency combined with the musicality and the beauty, and then you end up with this sort of, you know, balance of technique and of artistic expression, I would imagine.
It is well, it certainly expanded my toolbox.
Yeah, yeah.
And working with singers and having sort of this now 20 whatever year partnership with my husband and growing and learning with him as well has been inordinately valuable for me as a human, as a pianist, as a musician. Yeah, everything. So Dave's story is very, very different than mine. So
Well, I was just going to say,
started, prodded, young baby, groomed into this, and of course, kind of burnt out at a certain point.
yeah,
I mean, and Battersby, I do credit with giving me a love of it back again.
yeah.
Dave, on the other hand,
So David, how did you get into to singing, to music, and was that your first instrument? Did you play anything else, or did you?
No, I was a rock and roll guy.
Mm-hmm.
My primary instrument was drums. I played drums in heavy metal bands. I still pretty much only listen to heavy metal, so that's kind of been deeply ingrained.
Is that true?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
Oh yeah, pretty much exclusively. So I played drums in metal bands. I played in jazz bands. I played basically the whole rhythm section. So I played guitar and jazz piano and bass, and I did all sorts of things.
And how did you learn to play those instruments?
I started pretty, not very young, but second grade, third grade, I guess I started doing that kind of stuff. I don't come from a musical family, so there was kind of no, and Lelia doesn't either, but it's a little different perspective. There was no, it was like, oh, let's just do music, kind of fun music training as opposed to serious music training. So my piano training was playing Billy Joel songs, as opposed to really learning some chops. Anyway, so I did all that kind of stuff. When I went to high school, I showed up and I was like, "Hey, I'm a drummer." He's like, "You've already got a drummer? You do anything else?" I said, "Well, I play piano." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, you come to choir, and you could be a pianist for the chorus." And so, okay, cool. So I showed up to chorus, and there was someone else sitting at the piano. He's like, "I don't know, just go stand with the tenors." So I went up and
go fit in.
Yeah, that's right. Go up there. So I went up there and that came along, and then I don't know, there was an audition for Allstate or something, and I said, I'll try that. And he heard me sing. He's like, "Hey, you're pretty good. You want to be in another choir too?" So I ended up singing tenor one in one and bass two in another choir.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's kind of my voice is confusing like that. So anyway, ended up being involved in every element of music I could in high school. I played in the jazz band. I sang in every choir. I did music theater stuff, all that kind of thing.
Did you go to one of the Catholic schools in New Orleans, or did you go to?
No, I grew up in Connecticut.
Oh, Connecticut. Okay, I don't know why. Oh, so your relationship with New Orleans was for when you went to Loyola, right?
Well, yes and no. My dad's family is from New Orleans, so we used to spend summers down there. Well, not every summer, but we went down there often.
Okay.
So I already knew the city. But no, I went to a Jesuit high school here in Connecticut.
In Connecticut. Okay.
Anyway, so when it came time for college, I knew I wanted to do music, not necessarily out of a deep need, but just all right, I'm good at that. That sounds like fun. Let's do that. Yeah, I wasn't really an overachiever. Let's just get that out there. But I also did a bunch of other things, right? Like I was a firefighter by that time. I was an EMT. I worked construction jobs. I played football, lacrosse, hockey.
Wait, by what time?
By the time I joined the fire department when I was 16.
Wow. Okay.
Did that all through high school too. So I was kind of always this jack of all trades kind of guy,
Did we have our lacrosse talk?
Lacrosse?
Did you know that I founded the lacrosse team at my high school.
I think you and I actually tossed the ball a little bit in Bloomington.
Okay. Oh, we might have played a little catch. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, no, I actually founded the club lacrosse team at Loyola in New Orleans.
How funny.
So I did all these things, right? And I came time for college, and I was like, okay, what am I best at? The clear answer was drums. The best. My skill set was I was best at drums. So I said, well, I guess I'll always be good at that. There's no reason to do that in college.
I'll always be an excellent drummer.
Yeah, but it just cracks me up because that's so opposite of musician mentality, right?
Right. We're like, oh, I'm never good enough. Oh, I got to keep working. I've got to keep practicing. Yeah. I'm perfect at that. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't that necessarily. I was just like, I'll always be good. I might be able to get better, but
he actually wanted to go to college in a way for the right reasons. He wanted to get better at something else as a person.
Right. Expanding your universe there.
I think it always came from, again, being the jack of all trades kind of guy, that I'll just try something else now. So I ended up auditioning at 3 schools. 3? Maybe just 2. No, 3. Hart School of Music, Berklee College of Music, and Loyola in New Orleans. And that connection was, yes, I knew New Orleans, but because it was a Jesuit school, they had kind of sent some recruiters up.
Sure.
Which I totally embarrassed myself because the man's name was Dean Angeles, as in first name Dean, but I thought that was his title. So I would call and leave messages. Hello, Dean Angeles. This is Dave Sadlier. I'm like, what idiot? He must have thought I was.
So good. You probably like didn't even get it until like long after you.
When I finally moved down there and I saw his name on his door, I was like,
So good. That's so good.
Anyway, so I auditioned at these places for voice and jazz piano.
Okay.
And I ended up getting better scholarships for voice, not substantial, but a little bit. And I don't know how. I mean, I had no vibrato in the voice. I couldn't sing above an E flat without going into falsetto. I mean, there was really not a lot there.
And didn't you learn your second audition piece the night before? Because he thought he only had to know one.
I thought I only needed one song. I didn't know. And my friend who I was staying with in New Orleans said, "Hey, what are you singing?" I said, "I'm singing Seven Crudele."
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, what else?" I said, "What do you mean, what else?" He said, "You need another piece." I said, "Oh, God, I do." He's like, "Yeah, here, learn this." He gave me "I Got Plenty of Nuttin'."
Wow.
So I learned me some Porgy overnight. And
That's crazy.
And anyway, so I ended up, that's where it started. But, you know, even at that point, I had never seen an opera. I had no idea what being a voice performance major was. I mean, I was completely a fish out of water. I had no idea.
Wow.
And I found it to be really overwhelming because I was Loyola, and you know several singers who come out of Loyola,
Sure, yeah.
with a hotbed. I mean, Phil Frohnmeyer, my teacher there, who also passed recently,
Yeah.
was an all-star teacher. And, you know, people like Alfred Walker and Brian Eno and Sarah Jane McMahon, and I mean, the list kind of goes on and on.
Yeah.
We were all there at the same time. And it was this really, for somebody who didn't know what it was about, was really intimidating. You know, I mean, I go into studio class and I heard Alfred Walker sing and I said, "Oh my God, the dude's got a speaker cabinet in his head. I don't understand what's going on."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So at that point, my pool game was really good. My bar tab was really high. Nothing else was all right. So I ended up taking a year off from school, came home, worked on the ambulance again, and did some plays. And I ultimately said, I got to go back to school. I went back as a communications major, jazz piano minor. But I took opera workshop because they had always done scenes from musicals, and I enjoyed that. Okay. And he ended up casting me, though, in the quartet from Tenor. And I went to lacrosse practice first. And my first rehearsal, I learned all my music and stuff. I came up to my first rehearsal just drenched. It was a rainy day, drenched in mud and sweat and everything, carrying all my gear, walk into the room, throw it on the ground. And I remember being looked at by David Morlock, who was our stage director there, just a brilliant mind, and amazing guy. And he just looked at me like, I don't know, like I was the nastiest he'd ever seen in his life. Anyway, I came out of that rehearsal having never had more fun with music in my life. Wow. I didn't understand that opera was collaborative and energetic, and I didn't understand that it was I don't know, fun. I didn't know that, right? That's how naive I was. I didn't know anything about the rep. Yeah. And then I kind of thought about it more and more, and I had this sort of like moment of like Wagnerian clarity, like this sense of, you know, all the arts are present here, you know, and being somebody who was always a jack of all trades, the feeling that, oh my God, I could finally do something where I can bring together so many different things, from being athletic to being an actor to being a musician. I mean, all those kinds of things all came together for me, and so I said, "Yeah, this is what I'm going to do." And then I went all in, and
and even now, construction work.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're lighting, I can't tell you how many sets we've built and painted together.
Sure. Now that you're professors at University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, yeah. I was also thinking of just the construction work that you do on your home. Like when I was down there visiting and you were showing me all your projects, I was like, you did this? You're like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's unbelievable. It's incredible to someone who doesn't possess that skill set to watch you effortlessly, just sort of like the fact that you can just see it in your head and be like, yep, that's what I'm going to do with that.
Well, you know what it is? It's a really cool creative outlet that doesn't involve like work, like get you out. It's creativity, but it's not career creativity. It's not worrying about, you know, being a musician and how you sound and all this kind of stuff. So it really releases a lot of that. Also, I'm not good at sitting still. So whenever we have time off from the university, it gives me something to do other than drive people crazy with the fact that I can't sit still. So
yeah, he has a lot of energy, and we both enjoy it. Both my parents, my mom did interior design for a while. My dad was in real estate, and he's one of those, they'd be destroying a beautiful property in New Orleans, and he would go and like take the beautiful 10-foot windows and the stained glass and the chandelier, like, whatever, before they destroyed it,
and repurpose
and
it.
would come home and like build it into our house.
Wow.
So I kind of I grew up with that, with picking long before there was picking.
Right. Okay, so David, backing up a little bit for you, you said that when you were auditioning for school to go into undergrad for singing, you couldn't sing above an E flat without going into your falsetto. So when you started working with Phil Frohmeyer, did he start establishing some sense of technique in those early years before you said, I need to get out of here, and took that sort? Did you took a year off?
I took sophomore year off. I took it off. I'm not sure how voluntary it was. I mean, my second semester of freshman year was basically I withdrew from all my classes. I wasn't ready to deal with what it meant to be there. I will say the drinking age in New Orleans was 18 at the time.
Oh, sure, yeah.
On campus with your lunch card at the pub on campus, they would give you a pitcher of beer and a pretzel for lunch if that's what you wanted.
Wow.
I did not possess the maturity to deal with that.
I'm not sure. I certainly know I wouldn't have.
No. Anyway, but Phil, I mean, he did. Phil's a really holistic kind of guy. Very about singing and life being organic.
He always said, if it doesn't feel good,
it's probably not right.
First of all, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And
right.
Like, it should feel good.
Yeah. So did a lot of work with, low support, lots of breath flow, lots of well-placed natural speech-like vowels. But more than that, eventually, once you kind of get the basics of that, about singing every word with intention. The thing that I love about Phil, and that he did right by me, because I studied with him when I first went to Loyola as a freshman. When I left and I came back to the university and registered for voice lessons, he wouldn't take me. And he's like, I did never expect to see you again. And he told me this later, but he wouldn't take me in his studio because I didn't really deserve it. I didn't. And
dropped the ball.
I did. I dropped the ball. And I had to earn a spot back with him, at my first semester back, and I got involved in the opera and decided to get more serious about it all. And he said, actually, then my second semester, Drew Montague was my teacher. Then he was.
I love Drew. I love Drew.
And Drew was fantastic. I don't say I wasn't in Phil's studio with any sort of saying that the hierarchy was wrong.
Well, I know you've always said that you needed that time with Drew before.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Going back to Phil.
I didn't have vibrato then. Drew got my voice to spin. Taught me how to free up the voice and let the air through it, and all those sorts of things. So that was great. But Phil was great because he didn't micromanage. He knew the whole premise as a teacher that, like, the teacher shows up when the student is ready. That you can't teach if a student isn't ready to absorb.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, and he knew that, and had this amazing way of just stepping back, and didn't fuss a lot, didn't bitch at me, didn't give me a hard time, like, get it together, dude. I mean, it was just step back, and made me have to own my own responsibility. And that taught me just a ton as a student then, as a teacher now, for sure. So I met, as Lily mentioned, I happened to be in her theory class, and that was the next year after that we met. I really thought she was just the new, really, really, really hot girl in school. And when she walked up to the front of the class with all of her books and put it down on the teacher's desk, I was like, oh my God. How's this going to go? Anyway, but I really then got really focused, and Lelia really taught me, obviously having the very different backgrounds we have, she really taught me what it meant to be serious about preparation and serious about the work you've got to put in to get this done. And then by my senior recital, we performed. It was our second. We did my junior recital together,
which was all over the map. I mean, like name a piece, and he probably sang it on his junior recital.
Yeah, it was kind of just a best of.
From like Earl Koenig to Maria to. I mean, I'm not even.
That's just kind of all over
joking. Handel. I mean,
That's
all over.
amazing.
But Phil always heard Dave's voice going into Heldon. And so many other people through the years were like, no, it's this. No, I don't understand it. What is it? But Phil had always said, this is where you're going, which is part of why he let Dave, on his senior recital, do the entire Die schöne Müllerin cycle. Because what else do you do with a baby Heldon tenor? I mean, it's perfect.
Wow.
It's like gateway music. And
but he also knew enough that, when I said I want to do that, I know that there's very few students I would say yes. So like, hey, I want to do this for my senior recital. I want to do a 20 song cycle with 14 of them having 6 verses each. And if I don't get the answer from this fire, that'd be great. So but he also knew to say, you know what, let the education be gauged on the interests of the student.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. I mean, we can push and we can encourage and we can try to motivate and all that stuff, but ultimately the student's got to be the leader in the educational process. And I learned a lot from that, and I go back to that every day. They just released his book. I'm going to pull this out of the way. His book
It makes for a great effect, but it's like
I know we should be. I don't know. It should be a different offer than we're doing
usually
now.
on me. So
Yeah. So they just released his book, Breathe and Tell a Story. And so during his I think he started writing in about 2004. He started writing weekly letters that sort of wrapped up his thoughts from his teaching from the week, things he encountered with his students.
This is Phil?
Yeah, Phil.
Wow.
From repertoire to technique to life philosophy to managing fear, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, they just released the book about a month ago. It's on Amazon, $10, and it's this great collective of his thoughts about it. And,
he's a remarkable man. He was an English major at Harvard,
yeah.
and I mean, he was so eloquent about everything.
Yeah, I've heard such great things from him. Brian Email is one of my good friends, and he's talked a lot about his study with Phil, and it's a shame I never got to meet him, but yeah, that's great that he's got a book.
Yeah. They were because they released it posthumously because he died in 2014, I think.
Yeah.
Mesothelioma. Anyway.
We have lost too many.
Well, yeah, and of course, where David and I met at IU in Dr. McDonald's studio, he passed away.
Sure. Yeah, they all have. It's sad. It's sad to look back at the IU faculty also, who the reality of that school is so different from when we were there, right? And like looking through the faculty list, it's like I know your name, but I used to have you could walk down the hall and know everybody, and
yeah, that's right. That's
anyone
right.
in the studio, and it was kind of a big team in some ways. I mean, there were the obvious rivalries, but
sure. Yeah, in fact, my guest on the show last week was Russell Thomas, and he's a newly appointed faculty member there at IU. So we talked a little bit about that, but
yeah.
So what were some of the things that you were coming into IU, because you went to IU for your master's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were the technical things that Dr. McDonald sort of helped along?
Well, but I studied with Tutsi.
Oh, Tutsi. Right. Sorry.
I know you were primarily with McDonald, but in the summers you would work with.
I was with Tutsi, yeah, in the summer, yeah.
Yeah.
Other than his story time.
and that was highly educational on any level of any different.
Highly educational, I tell you. But what were some of the things? I mean, working with him as often as you got to then, because I only had that one summer that I was there in Bloomington. But what were some of the things that he helped instill coming from the work that you were doing with Phil Frohmeyer and Drew?
Well, I think in many ways, the experience of being around, one of the masters of the 20th century is in many ways such a instigator for education and inspiration, right? I mean,
I mean, look around his room and their photographs of
those photos are just amazing.
Caro Maestro, from Pavarotti, and I mean, come on. You know,
Yeah,
so
the
that
one that got when I saw the picture. Oh yeah, that's me and Leonard Warren, me and Lenny. We
yeah,
go and sing it. I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's still shocking when you
yeah.
start to really read about who that man was and the experiences that he had, and it's just incredible. It's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
It is, and he would always have stories. So anything that you would perform, and not those kind of stories, he had those too. But anytime you would perform something, I mean, I'm always the Kejelita. He always wanted to hear that. He just loved that aria. But he'd be like, I remember sitting backstage and waiting to go on. And that guy, who's that guy? That UC Björling. He just sang that so well.
Yeah.
You're like,
So I mean,
how would you kill to be in the wings listening to UC Björling singing Kejelita Manina? I mean, just he always had a story to go with it. And his priority was expression.
actually, this is probably a good perspective because Lelia was in every lesson
Yes.
as
Oh,
a
you
pianist.
played for
So
him.
she probably even could answer that better than I can.
Yeah.
Have observed, you played all my lessons with Phil at a certain point.
Yep.
And then that, so.
They both prioritized expression over production. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares if there's an ugly note here and there, but if it means something, that's
Right.
and that is more important than pear-shaped tones on every single,
Right.
and more interesting and more unique. So I mean, I think it was good because Dave is a very expressive singer, and he never had anyone that was going to beat that out of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
his teachers nurtured that. They encouraged that. They encouraged the love of the language. He was very good, particularly with Italian. And he loves work. I think, yeah, most of your rep that you don't do now because you just are not an Italian tenor. But he got to work all of that with this man who heard nothing but the best singers do it.
Right.
Stylistic things, who gave him some freedoms with that he now is able to share with his students.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. He also did a lot for your voice. Like he did a lot of exercises that helped him work through the passaggio, kind of just drilling over and over again. And that idea of, he would talk about his time as being a drill sergeant in the Army, and how he had to project his voice and learn how to project it without hurting it.
Mm-hmm.
So he would practice sort of yelling with Dave, and how to do that in a healthy way, because singing is just sustained magnified
speech.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. An old friend of mine that I've known since elementary school, we recently got back in touch, and he, he's like, oh, so what have you been doing? And you're like, I'm an opera singer now. And he's like, really? Yeah. And so he listened to some stuff, and he was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so he wanted to share it with his kids. And so he showed his son this video of me singing, and I thought it was the best explanation of what it is that we do. So this kid, never seen an opera, doesn't know anything about operatic singing, whatever. He listens to it and he's like, wow, it's really beautiful. It sounds like, it's like elegant yelling. And I thought that was such a great description, this idea of elegant yelling. Yeah, it really is. It's just this projected speech, and you've got to learn how to do it so that this is not what's involved at all, right?
Right, yeah.
It's kind of amazing to think about. So do you remember thinking back throughout your undergrad or your graduate studies in voice, was there ever that one moment where you're like, oh, okay. So, like a super light bulb kind of moment that just really turned things in a pivot that opened something up, or that, sent it in a different direction that was
like technically?
Yeah, technically, yeah.
I can answer that.
Yeah. Let her answer this. I know what she's going to say.
Every single stinking lesson with Andreas Koulimenos.
Everyone.
Every single one was an epiphany.
Wow.
Man's a rock star. Again, he teaches through a lot of imagery and kinetic kind of kinesthetics, and metaphor and feelings about things less
Which resonates
because
100% with
again, because I didn't have this, I don't know. I mean, I guess by that point I already had my master's, so I was trained, but because I had done so many things in my life, I really lock in with that. I understand concepts from things that have nothing to do with singing that have everything to do with singing. And that really resonated with me. And he is such an amazing diagnostician.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, he hears exactly what needs to get fixed. He sits there with his fingers on his knee for a minute, making a face, trying to feel the sound inside his head. He's like, no, you don't want to go dee. You want to go dee. And you're like, oh, yes, I do want to do that. Okay. I'll do, but I mean, but he had all these beautiful imagery that I just clicked with immediately. And I sang on his audition master class at IU. And right away I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, he came back from the master class. I wasn't there. He's like, this man. And he sang the high C, and he's like a Verdi baritone.
I was singing Que Jelly La Manina at that point. And
I
was saying the C that just ripped the paint.
Yeah.
Almost broke the glass. It was in the lobby of the Mac.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, what are you doing? It was killer. Anyway, he's an amazing singer.
And he could
amazing
deliver,
teacher.
like in lessons, he could demonstrate everything too. So you're like, you know, not only did he talk the talk, he walked the walk.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a shame his career was cut off shorter, but in a way it's not, because we have the gift of his teaching. And I think anyone that worked with them kind of feels the same way, of just like that he is just an amazing teacher.
I'd always heard such great things about him, but his first semester was the semester after I'd already left to go to Juilliard. So we just missed each other.
Yeah, amazing. But yeah, he's the best singer who you've never really heard.
Yeah.
You know, because his health has always been bad. I mean, he's had every sort of malady you could possibly have, extremely severe, you know, cancer and heart problems and diabetes. I mean, he's a medical miracle is what he is.
Wow.
I mean, almost true. He shouldn't really be here, and yet we're still lucky enough to have him. You know.
Well, I mean, okay, so maybe I'm digging a little bit too much, but can you think of one or two things from those that were really just, you know, that you could talk about the specificity of that
the idea, like, all right, so using like a metaphor, the idea of using a whip, okay, that when does the whip make its sound? Is it about the outward motion? Is it pushing out this way that makes, no, it's about allowing the preparation, the flow, and then at that point you make the sound.
Right.
So it's about pulling, it's about resistance, it's about balance. Ultimately, I didn't know this when he said this initially, it's about the balance of breath, it's about the balance of resonance. And it really got me away from feeling like I had to go out with my voice all the time. And as soon as that happened, my voice got 5 times bigger.
Wow.
You know, as soon as he taught me to rake the sound in, as it were, to feel like I'm singing this way instead of that way,
right.
To sound small. You know, we all have the confusion as singers of, you know, I talk about this with my students, that the balance of the dichotomy of focus and space. We tell singers, well, we need focus in your sound, but we also want some space. And so if you translate that to open and closed, right? So basically space is open and focus is closed. It sounds like we have this irreconcilable difference, you know, but teaching me that that putting space in the vowel and space in the throat and space here was just going to pinch off underneath, as opposed to keeping the vowel smaller and feeling more substantive breath and more sustain of air. Right. And that was that in particular, and that all kind of came out of that, like using a whip kind of thing, or this thing with a bow and arrow, feeling like you're pulling the bow, right? And that distance that you're building ultimately is going to result in propulsion, in projection. Right. You know, and then if the further you want to shoot the bow, the arrow, the further back you've got to pull, the more resistance in some ways you need. You know, obviously balancing that. Now we're not ever talking about like locking this up, right? But in terms of really breath and where you feel vowel / resonance. That's amazing. Yeah. Isn't that interesting that an analogy of a whip could have such an impact on understanding something technically and being able to, but that's how the voice works. You know, that's how the brain works. And when our instruments are inside of our bodies, sometimes we have to think of something, like you just said, like something so different, and then make relation to it, and then
maybe we even figure it all out later, like you said,
Yeah.
like how that balances it out. But
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
And so now, of course, well, not now. Let's say, at which point did you decide to pursue teaching? Let's go with
Yeah.
you, Lelia. When did you decide to pursue teaching?
Well, when I started teaching, when I went back to New Orleans and was teaching at Loyola and UNO and New Orleans School of Creative Arts. This is our youngest.
She wanted to hang out.
Hi. At that point, when I started teaching, I was like, I really like this, and I wasn't very good at it at first because I don't know if anybody's really good at it at the very beginning.
Right.
But the learning curve was pretty good, and I just enjoyed it. And I realized that if I wanted to teach at a university level, I would need that doctorate to do so. And so that sort of just was in the back of my mind for a couple of years, and decided that that was the path that I was going to take. And then Dave finished up, and we were looking at places. I said, you know what, honestly, it doesn't matter where I do my doctorate. I already have 2 degrees from amazing schools. I really just kind of need this piece of paper. And of course, it turns out we went to IU as our first audition, and Dave had already worked with Mr. Tozzi in a master class, and they hit it off. Like, they got along great during the master class, and Tozzi was recruiting you. And I had auditioned for IU way back in the day, in Eastman days. So I auditioned for 3 schools. I auditioned for Curtis, Eastman, and IU. And I got into IU, and they made me a great offer, but Eastman kind of spoke to me more.
Mm-hmm.
The head at IU remembered me and was like, we want her. We wanted her before. We want her now. So we kind of could have turned around and gone home after that first audition. We went there, and I mean, you know how Bloomington is. It was wonderful. Like, the atmosphere was great, and it's an amazing school. And it was the best choice for him, the best choice for me. I mean, it's a very competitive doctorate for piano, and so I will never. I mean, I just think we're so lucky that we got to go there. It was an amazing place, and it was an amazing time to be there too. I mean, what a remarkable faculty and group of students too. Yourself included.
How cool that you both got in. Would have sucked.
And with very nice scholarship too. So,
right.
Yeah, I
So you mentioned you started teaching at Loyola, and you were teaching music theory, and what else?
Yep. And I love teaching music theory. I was adjunct. I just taught theory.
Okay.
Theory and ear training was a married class. And then I did a bunch of accompanying at UNO and at NOCA. I don't even remember what I was doing. I was
teaching chamber music.
And chamber music and a couple of and I was private teaching as well.
Mm-hmm. And then what was your next teaching position after New Orleans?
I guess IU as a assistant instructor.
Yeah.
I did a piano class, and I was David Kirtlich's assistant in the last year of my studies there. And then, but it is kind of cool because it's the largest secondary piano department in like the world.
Right.
Of course, he was amazing. He handled everything, but I got to do some stuff. And then, during that time, Dave got his first full-time job, and we knew it was just a 1 year.
You're jumping.
I am jumping because this comes to family, and we're talking about families.
Right, that's right.
Dave kind of reached a crossroads at a certain point.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started doing the young artist thing, right, and sang with St. Louis and Glimmerglass, and then I got a gig during the year. I had started my doctorate by that point only because it was the only degree at IU that didn't make you take choir, right? And so like that means you could then go do other things like sing. And so and it was great, and I was out singing little gigs, but some concerts here and there, little opera company things, and joined, in my first 4 semesters of my degree, I completed 5 classes. Not good, and 4 of them were Miss Hart's songlit class, and she was amazing, and just said, just do the assignments, go sing, and just do the assignments and send them in, and you're cool.
Yeah.
You understand the point of this. Good.
Right.
And then, I got a gig with Chicago Opera Theater, and we moved up there when Ada, our eldest daughter, was 5 weeks old.
Oh, he also was singing a gig on her due date.
Yeah, I was singing Tamino on the night.
She came early, thankfully. And everybody's
So
like,
she was born early?
Well, yeah. So we found out that Lelia was pregnant while we were at Glimmerglass, and all of the people, all the sort of the folks there who already had kids were like, you should cancel the Tamino. Like, don't cancel it. I was like, no, we're gonna be okay. Don't worry about us.
And I said, no, you're gonna do it. It's some money.
It's money, and we're having
like,
a kid, and go
right.
sing.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we got closer and closer, like, oh
I was
man,
like, what? Oh God. And
This
then
is
of course
stupid.
you can't cancel at that point. So I did have, she obliged and came about a week early, but then he's taken off and I've got a newborn.
commuting back and forth to Michigan.
I never changed a diaper before I had kids. So, I was, that was not as much fun as it sounds. And then he was singing with Chicago Opera Theater.
Yeah.
Ada was living in her bassinet.
We're in a hotel
closet.
room, right? Except it had a little kitchenette, so at least that. But
Right.
5-week-old living in the closet of our hotel room.
Been there, done that. Actually, when I was in Austin singing Lucia, and Christina and Millie were with me, we put Millie in a closet, like her little crib, like a little thing fit in.
Exactly.
Yep, exactly.
And we were up all the time, and then finally one night we got to go out to dinner by ourselves, and Leah Partridge said, hey, I'll watch the baby tonight. You guys just go. Have a good night. And so we went out. It was amazing. Came home. Ada was asleep already. We went to bed and didn't wake up until like 9 o'clock the next morning. We're like, and Lilia's like, Dave, go check. I think she's dead.
I
said, what?
Freaked out.
Oh my God.
You go look. I think she might be dead because she hasn't woken up yet. And we have Leah to thank to this day for.
Ada was a champion sleeper. She was awesome, unlike this one.
Yeah, you were a problem.
Right. Right.
Anyway, I kind of stepped back and looked and thought about the long-term implications of things, and knew that I like to be not a homebody, but you talked about like me liking to do construction and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, all those projects.
I know that I like to do that. I know that I like to be around my family. I know that I don't want
constructing people's voices.
Well, I
too.
do, and that
think
turned
it
into that
crosses
later.
over.
That
Yeah.
turned into that later. But I kind of said, I don't think that I want to be on the road forever.
Yeah.
I don't think I want that. I think I'd rather be a family guy and still, be able to go sing kind of when I want to sing. It may not be as high profile, but that doesn't mean it can't be of artistic value.
Right. Of course.
And all that kind of stuff. And so, so that's kind of when I made that choice and went back to IU and buckled down and finished the degree.
And then he got the job for that 1 year at Taylor University in Upland, Indiana. And I did adjunct with them as well. And we were commuting back and forth.
I was driving about 1,000 miles a week between Bloomington and Upland.
And thank goodness for friends helped with babysitting.
Yeah.
And taking care, all of whom are
Vera
still sort of
and
like
Chris Bonseller and
John
Jerry
Huckle,
and John Huckle.
yeah, they're all like aunts and uncles.
Wow.
But yes, we were very grateful to have wonderful people around that we knew.
Yeah.
Sally.
Yeah.
We're taking good care
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
our
Sally
child.
Bumbaugh made that possible.
Yes, she
Raynell's
did.
mom made
know.
that.
So I saw her. Sally commented. She was like, "Oh, I'm so looking forward to it." I was like, "How do you know David and Lelia?"
Because she basically raised Ada for a year and the weekdays when we were driving back and forth to this job.
But I was Raynell's piano teacher, so I met her
Oh, you were? Okay.
well before, like when she was in high school. When
Yeah,
they
they
moved
Florida.
they moved up from Florida.
That's
So
right. That's right.
Like she's doing
Kicking
amazing
butt.
things. I
Oh,
love
she's
it.
doing so great. I
Oh.
think she's like one of the few singers who's actually on a gig right now.
She's gigging everywhere. She's
she's
like, I
working.
love Europe. I'm going to sing everywhere, and you're going to deal with it.
Yep.
And I'm hanging 30 feet in the air upside down while I
While
do it.
I'm doing it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Kind of
yeah,
amazing.
that was, I don't know, we had that Taylor job for a year, and then Dave got a very prestigious offer, and they also offered me, this is a funny thing, they offered me a full-time job, but they said it's just a 1-year contract at Baylor.
And there is no
And-
chance.
Yeah, and there's no chance of renewal. And the dean was incredibly clear about it. But us being completely naive, we're like, I'm just going to do a really amazing job so that they're really just going to need me. They're going to keep needing me. Well, in academia, that's not how it works. Like,
No, the
to
provost,
create,
right?
Yeah, to create a new faculty line takes kind of an act of Congress,
Right.
literally, at least academia Congress. So unfortunately, I then got bumped down to adjunct after that, and he gave me everything he could possibly give me.
Was that Baylor?
But
Baylor University of Waco.
and I loved my department. I was teaching theory again, and I really love teaching theory. I'm teaching AP theory right now, and I'm like, oh, I missed this. Like, I'm really enjoying it.
Wow.
But I'm a theory nerd. I've always been a theory nerd. So yeah, we had the Baylor experience, which ended up being not the environment that was right for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that's right. Ron was born in Waco.
So
you have that forever.
And Dave then got a job at Christopher Newport, and we knew they were having a piano opening. So
is in Virginia.
We kind of sat on it, and I ended up having a full-time position the next year, and he had the full-time position there, and everything was great until they decided that they were going to rehash the piano department, and at the time told me they were not even going to have a piano teacher anymore, that it really had to be musical theater. Of course, they have a piano teacher now, but it just was such a mess, and it scared us.
Yeah.
So there were only about 3 or 4 jobs available at the time. And he applied for the one down in South Texas with absolutely no intention of taking it.
No. I know you're a Texan, born and bred, but I grew up here in Connecticut. Living in Texas was not on the map. When I got to experience it living in Waco, and that wasn't really,
different. That's a different place.
Well, we were kind of everybody's like liberal, like token artsy friends, like, aren't they cute? Look at them. It's like going to the zoo and seeing the,
their little Obama sign alone, and
right.
Yeah. Anyway, but so I decided, no, I'm not never moving back to Texas. And I had almost accepted a job from another university in Virginia, Radford, up in the mountains. And we were going to buy a house basically, and got a call from Texas, and they said, would you please come down for an interview? And I'm like, yeah, no, thanks. I kind of don't want to. And she's like, Dave, she's like, can you call him back? I'll call him back. She's like, just go look. Anyway, so now we've been down in South Texas for 7 years, and
wow.
8, right?
Yeah, this is our 8th year, except that we're in Connecticut now.
Yeah.
Oh, no, crazy COVID adventures.
Okay, so let's get to, so what, from your perspective of teaching, what are some of the things that you've seen? Let's say, it's primarily an undergraduate school, yeah? Or is there a graduate program, or?
There is a graduate program, but undergrad is definitely the primary focus.
And so what, in that area, this is in McAllen, Texas, yeah? Or in Harlingen?
The school's in Edinburgh.
We live in
Edinburgh, right?
We live in McAllen, yeah.
Okay. What sort of things are you finding, are there trends, or are there technical deficiencies that you see, or are there some strengths that you see in that area that singers that come in, and what's the culture down there?
Well, I mean, that is the strength, is the culture. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful place, particularly from a cultural perspective. I mean, it's actually why we chose to go there. Lelia, when I went to interview, she's like, please take an extra day and try to absorb the culture and see what's around, see if we could live there. And I was just like, this place is really cool. I mean, it's like living in Mexico with a U.S. address, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of the beautiful culture that comes with that.
Which includes music.
Which includes music
and
at the very center of it.
Love of music.
And so as for singers, I mean, look, almost all of my students have grown up singing mariachi, and they know how to just open up and wail.
Exactly.
And they know how to use text in a naturally communicative way. I mean, teaching at some of the fancier places, teaching at Baylor or teaching in Virginia, the students were always in the box, always worried about how they. Not all of them. No, not all of them. If anyone's listening previously was my student there, I didn't mean you.
Sure.
But I mean, there was a tendency to worry about how I look, how I sound, how am I being judged, as opposed to I'm gonna breathe and tell a story. And these students really have that. Vocally, they're amazing, and music education in Texas is great, and So most of them are proficient sight readers and are
Sure.
musically pretty solid and have a solid background with that. So I mean, all of that stuff is very, very strongly in the assets file. You know, if you go back, if anybody's watching or you want to go look, we did a Carmen production at the university 2 years ago. I conduct now and direct, but I was conducting the production. You'll hear some just astounding singers. Our Carmen and our Don Jose were off the charts good.
Wow.
I was a little big. He's a more lyric tenor than Jose is, but I mean, but man, it was great. We actually did it in Spanish. We did it in Spanish translation.
Oh wow. Okay.
Try to bring the public in.
Sure.
You know, to
Sure.
feel at home with going to opera, that they could.
Oh, and
understand.
most opera was always sung in the original or in the language of the
Vernacular, yeah.
Yeah, in the vernacular. Exactly.
So I mean, but we have some, I mean, just amazing horns down there, which is great. You know, I'll say the challenge is sometimes, you know, they call it the Rio Grande Valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is we're 4 hours south of San Antonio,
Right.
And in many ways it's like being on an island. I mean, there's really nothing between San Antonio and us, right? And I think it's very easy for the students to think that that is the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easy for them to not look beyond that constraint, and that's limiting. I think that they self-limit themselves in terms of career and potential because of that. And some of the most rewarding stuff we've been able to do, you know, we'll talk about in a little while, but the program we run in England, Music Across the Pond, you know, we've been able to bring students who've never seen a tree taller than 15, 20 feet,
Right.
or a house older than 50 years old, go to England and see something that's thousands of years old.
Unbelievable.
And the worldview perspective that provides is astounding. We brought students to England, to Germany, to Italy, the various places we've taught in those places.
Wow.
And able to expand worldviews like that is amazing to me. And the reason, and what you said about, you know, constructing voices, but also helping to kind of construct lives. It feels very meaningful. You know, that's something I grappled with for a little while, because having done stuff like being a firefighter and EMT, right, where you are putting it on the line and trying to like save people's lives and do stuff, that feels very gratifying and rewarding, and you know you're doing good. And I had a hard time for a while feeling like I had missed that part, but the lives we've been able to change through teaching and through music, that's you know, that's where the point of it is.
That's amazing. I mean, you know, when you graciously brought me down to do a master class before COVID hit,
which you were amazing in, by the way.
Oh well, thank you very much. But you know, it was an honor to work with those students, because I see exactly what you're talking about. I remember those horns; they were like unbelievably talented singers, young, impressive singers. But you know, talking with them a little bit, you could also see this idea of like, you know, what are your plans for graduate school? Oh, well, I don't know. My family, you know, I don't know. You know, it's like everything kind of is just, we got to stay here, and I got to, you know, take care of my parents. And, you know, it's like, there's that sort of sense of, I mean, which is great. Don't get me wrong, you know, of that sense of
responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
it's very great. I mean, it's great. It's amazing the strength of the family units there in Deep South Texas. But for students who are doing this sort of thing, it also can be very limiting.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been difficult. I had my first year teaching there. I had a really talented singer, baritone, who I moved up to tenor, and he was talking about grad school. He was a senior. I said, "Where are you thinking about grad school?" He's like, "I don't know. I don't think I could get in." And I was like, "Dude, you could get into IU like that. I believe."
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "No, I don't think I could." I said, "I think you can." So we got him to apply, but his parents wouldn't help him with the application fee, not because they couldn't afford it, but because they didn't want him to go away.
Wow.
And he ended up, we did some fundraising, got him, he went and interviewed and auditioned, ended up getting his master's at IU. But
wow.
the struggle was really intense to get familial support for him to go and expand his life in that way. You know?
Right.
So you're right though, that your instinct was right about that, for sure.
Yeah.
But what a beautiful place. And I remember you took me to this like hole in the wall Mexican restaurant, and it was just phenomenal. I mean, like everything, that whole street of that downtown little area.
Yeah, 17th
so
Street.
Cool. Yeah. It's such a cool place. So everything shut down, and
Yeah.
we all had to figure out what we were going to do. And you guys looked at each other and said, "Let's live in the van down by the river."
That's what we did.
You know,
That's exactly what we did.
There you go.
a little Chris Farley going on.
That's exactly what we've done. We're not by a river. We are by an amazing family next to us, Laura and Brian Hobbs, who brought over the light for us. That's providing light here. They have been our partners in crime.
So how we got here as family.
Yeah, we got his family. You're right.
How we got here as family. We started off. Our daughter Ada is a very competitive volleyball player.
She's a junior in high school.
Enjoyed seeing the recent videos on Facebook of the competition. It's been great.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you follow us all on Facebook, you know that we post a lot of volleyball stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, it's her junior year. It's a big deal. She's got lots of places that are recruiting her, and she was supposed to go to some volleyball camps. The writing was on the wall in the Valley. I had watched our friends first in Italy, and then in New York and the area around here, getting hit by this virus like nobody's business, and the horror stories and the the writing was on the wall that this was the direction that the Valley was going, and that was the direction that the Valley was going. And I'm like, we got to get out of here. Ada's got things to do, and I don't want to be someplace where I don't know whether there's going to be a hospital bed if myself or somebody that I, my family, this is, the whole thing was obviously terrifying for all of us and so much unknown. So yeah, we decided within a week, we bought a new car and a trailer.
Well, I remember you were like, yeah, think about buying a new truck because I think at some point I want to get like a trailer or something, that would be fun. I was like, oh, cool. Then I saw you got this like used Mercedes, like this beautiful white kind of crossover thing. And I was like, oh, wow, you got it. That's great. And then it was like 2 days later, I was like, oh, you got a trailer too. Like it all happened very like boom, boom, boom.
It happened so fast.
It's kind of,
So July 3rd, we were going, and we were heading to ultimately to Lancaster for a school that Ada was looking at. And they said, even though we had been on the road for 2 weeks quarantining, they're like, nope, you're from Texas, even though we hadn't been in Texas. You're from Texas. The lawyers say ixnay.
Nobody from Texas can participate in the camp.
So
we're halfway through Virginia when we get this.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we ended up staying with a couple of nights longer with some friends from Virginia who we hadn't seen in a while, and that was wonderful. This has been the most brilliant thing because during COVID, you can absolutely have social distancing outdoors. We met up with so many friends and reconnected with so many people across the country.
Loved the photos of your trip from South Texas all the way up to Connecticut were epic. It was like, that seemed like the coolest family, like 15 family vacations put into one. That seemed like just the most cool way of seeing all of your friends. And it was
so neat. I mean, people, we just got to reconnect. What part of what we love about our time in Europe in the summers teaching there and performing there is getting to reconnect with random people. People are everywhere, right? But we had that experience this summer and getting to hang out with folks who, we hung out with baritone Keith Fairs in the parking lot of Bowling Green State University's auditorium or whatever. We set up camp. We had lunch. We hadn't hung out with Keith in 20 years. Stadium, yeah. But we just to have those experiences.
And then he got to have Keith come and guest.
Yeah, he did a masterclass on Monday.
Masterclass on Monday.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
But yeah, seeing people. We see John Huckle every year now in Italy. But we actually got to see him in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Just around and we went into Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Yeah. But we just kind of.
And the girls had never really done that. They'd gone to Europe every single summer for the past 10 years or so, and to see a little bit of a good bit of the United States like that, I think was something that needs to happen probably with all of us who live here. And it becomes especially meaningful in times like this.
Yeah.
Remember just how gorgeous this country
is. It's true. It really is true because each time I find myself in a new geographic place, it's always surprising how, I don't think maybe a few, but usually it's like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful thing. It's like you just sort of are surprised by this country's um, versatility in topography and you know, just sort of like, I don't know. You have the Pacific Northwest, and then you have
Oh,
you know the upper Midwest, and they're just so incredibly different, but yet beautiful in their own ways. And you know all the lakes up there in that upper Michigan area. I mean, it's just unbelievably gorgeous.
yeah, stunning. I will say that we didn't always fit in with the demographic of the trailer park crowd.
Really.
I mean, I actually do not have any clothing that has a Confederate flag on
And
it.
you'd be surprised how many of them wear that constantly. I won't say that about everyone. We met some lovely
No, we
folks
did.
too, but there were definitely some
We did
interesting
see
conversations.
someone who was wearing it
Literally.
on every article of clothing that he had.
Literally every article of clothing.
It was so
Huh.
upsetting, and like
Yeah,
maybe
that was tough.
like
But
in my mouth a little
I've
bit.
never
Like
really thought of America as that pretty though, because most of my experiences have been cities and stopovers.
Yeah.
Like we just traveled through America to get to England. I hadn't been to Michigan or Maine, and I hadn't really understood the fact that it actually is pretty and it's not just all, urbanized.
Right.
So
Maine is. Did you go through Portland, Maine?
yeah, we did. We went up to Acadia National
Acadia.
Park and Bar Harbor.
Oh, I mean, some of the most beautiful country in the world. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just
stunning.
unbelievable.
Stunning. Stunning.
it was just so shocking to me
It was-
the fact that
Yeah.
I didn't have to travel across the ocean to see pretty stuff.
yeah,
You know, but
Eye-opening.
what came out of all this though was we started looking at, okay, what's our exit strategy now? When are we going home? And Lelia started looking at again the COVID numbers, and without getting overly political, the government in Texas just screwed it up. And I mean, when Governor Abbott said, I'm going to open up the beaches the weekend before Memorial Day, the Valley was doing great until that point.
Yeah.
And that happened, and it's been even still to this day, there's 200 new cases a day in the
Oh,
county.
I'm in Houston, and driving down the highway, we're at code level red still.
Right.
I mean, it's terrible.
It's an abomination. And so, she's looking at those numbers, and then she's like, well, we've got, your parents are in Connecticut. Let's see what the numbers are doing there. And, Connecticut went from in April being the worst state in the country
Right.
for COVID to by July or June being the best state in the country.
Oh wow.
Connecticut and Vermont.
Yeah. And so she said, like, let's go and hang out there for a little bit and see what happens. And we got here.
Well, and I also looked. I said, just for the heck of it, let me see
Oh, yeah.
where the best volleyball team, high school, because maybe we can talk to the coach and get some recommendations and
Some
maybe.
training. Maybe
Ada
we should
can
get some training
training.
for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I look at him like, Dave, you are not gonna believe this, but the state champions last year were Trumbull,
My hometown.
his hometown.
My
Where was
parents.
their
The school that your daughters would just
Right.
normally go to if you lived.
Yeah.
in-
They're
Wow.
the state champions in
They're
volleyball.
the-
So
I
like,
mean,
oh,
it
boy.
was almost like this weird stars aligning kind of.
That's
what-
awesome.
Okay, someone's trying to tell us something. So
Yeah,
I've been remote. Dave is remote for the whole year. His
Yeah.
university is very smart and handled things very
Yeah.
well.
really have.
My school, I teach at a high school. It's between a rock and a hard place because TEA, of course, has said, we're not giving any money to you if you don't go back in person. And so the schools are stuck, and now teachers are essential workers, and all this business.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, So I'm likely going to have to go back.
Starting in the spring.
Well, we are heading back about the day after Thanksgiving.
She and I are going to fly back.
and check on things. And technically, they're actually starting up for some strange reason 5 days before Thanksgiving. But my principal, being a wonderful person, it's like, no, don't. She didn't want me to fly back and forth twice to have to come back here for Thanksgiving. So she's like, continue remotely, and then I'll be back in December. It seems likely that maybe in January, but I don't see how numbers are going to improve that drastically
No.
following 2 big holidays.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I'd love to be wrong.
Good.
And everybody's scared. And just, we know schools are germ factories.
They're acting
Well,
like it's going to expire.
I'm just hoping that maybe we can get a national policy that actually takes safety and science into account.
Oh wow.
I know,
What a
shocking.
revolutionary idea.
Thank you, maybe Georgia and Pennsylvania. Maybe
We'll see
thank
what
you.
happens. What a
Mr. Baskerville said that.
Excitingly, incredibly bizarre. I mean, you know,
It's been a week, huh?
it's been a week. It has been a week.
No, it's been 2020. I mean,
Yeah, it's
that
nuts.
is
Right. Like, who expected anything different, right?
Right.
whatever. I mean, at this point, rabid
Yeah.
muskrats could be attacking houses, and you know.
Who knows?
Well, what are you both looking forward to from a teaching perspective, from maybe performance perspective, from family perspective? What are you looking forward to when you look ahead?
Well, I mean, I'm looking forward again to work with my students in person again, and not just on the computer screen. You know,
Yeah.
for any number of reasons. I mean, for technical reasons, to be able to judge resonance and things like that you can't.
Yeah.
You can hear vowels, but I mean. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to maybe England this summer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back on track with our program in England and getting some performing done. And Lelia and I, we really have done, obviously, pianist, singer. We really have sort of specialized in recital repertoire, and the program we run in England it started like that. It started as an art song training program. It's now morphed to include a lot of choral conducting training. We added chamber music. We've got the composition program with it too. So it does a lot of stuff. But definitely getting that stuff back on track. Really looking forward to that. It was hard this past summer, to have to shut that down. I'm glad we did the online virtual thing, and thank you for.
Well, yeah, and I'll remind you
that
was actually an incredible experience for everybody involved, myself included. So, obviously, I want to go to England with you guys, and I look forward to that experience from
absolutely
on faculty there. But yeah, I think it's been. I think everyone has found positive ways to adapt during this time, but I think you're right. We're all looking forward to the moment that we're able to be in the same room and sing and not have to wear a mask and be able to have that empathetic sort of residence perspective, so that we can get back to doing things that we love to do. But
yeah, and just be able to hang out with friends and give them a hug, and
right.
I mean, just it's the little things too that start to like, wow, I'm an introvert, but I kind of miss that.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll crawl back into my shell after a little while, but so many little things that you just sort of take it for granted. And
it's what has been cool though, and the reason we really chose to stay here was so that our girls could kind of keep advancing in their lives this year with sports. Bronwyn's been able to play soccer. She's a goalkeeper for the soccer team, and
cool.
to be able to really engage in life in a safe way. I know that other places are doing sports as well, but I don't trust that they're being handled safely in South Texas. I just don't, with the numbers.
Well, and it's not perfect anyway. It's not totally perfect here, but
well, I'm sure everybody saw that meme that was like, the pandemic is not over just because you're over it.
Yes, you're
right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in Texas or in the South, or just, let's just say, maybe in general, just, if you have that thought, you have that feeling, I'm over this, we got to get back to doing things. And then they just start doing things like it doesn't exist. And then what did we see? Significant spikes, I mean, it's like, it's one of those things that's happening. So
but that's what I'm hoping just to first of all, have feedback without a computer screen involved, right? Whether that's a performance or whether that's teaching or whether that's a conversation. I mean, we've gotten to hang out on Zoom a lot and have virtual happy hours and whatever, but it's a lot more fun to do it in person.
Absolutely.
And not have to be outside. As winter's coming in on us here in Connecticut, looking at the reality of not being able to hang out with anybody because of that is, but I'm, in terms of family, I don't feel, I in some ways don't want it to end because of family, because of the trailer thing and the experiences we've gotten to have. I mean, look, we're really lucky because we have had our kids captive every summer for the past 11 or 12 years, right? We've taken them to Europe for 2 months, and we've had really intense family bonding time. And this has provided more of that. And it's priceless.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I'm a little scared for that to end, honestly.
Yeah,
I feel you. I mean, we've talked to, all of us in the performing arts, especially those of us who spend more time on the road during the year. this time that I've had to spend with my wife and daughter, this never happened. It just never happens. And to have this length of time, and you're right, it's like a bonding that you'll never, we'll look back on this after, everything kind of continues to move forward. And I think we'll realize how incredibly special that aspect of this was. And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, enjoy it while we can and make the best of all of it, which I think that you guys are certainly doing. So
The other scary part is Ada is a junior, which means she's gonna graduate
Off to college soon.
Yeah.
Leave us
Wow.
all. And she said I can't even take her closet.
She's having a dramatic moment.
Well, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you guys coming on here and kicking off Family November month. I think this is going to be fun to get the different perspectives on how everybody met and works together. But my gosh, it sounds to me like you guys have had just such fantastic coincidences. Is that a word? Coincidental experiences.
Yeah.
Like I said, you because oftentimes it happens where you're like one person, maybe you both do the same, she's a pianist and you're a singer, but let's say she's a lot better than you are. So she gets in here and you don't get it.
Which is true.
That's
accurate.
Not right now.
but you were good enough. You were good enough and you got
Just got by. Yeah.
She's been doing it since she was 3, so she had a bit of a head start.
There you go. There you go.
Just for
Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us, and I appreciate it. And I do look forward to the next time that we get to hang out, and hopefully that is sooner than later.
Very soon, I hope.
All right, absolutely.
Thank you so much for doing this. What a great way of keeping people connected and sharing stories. And I've enjoyed listening to other singers, up to this point.
Oh, good. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Well,
it's great.
All of the episodes are on youtube.com/Weston Hurt. That's my Under the Hood channel. And I will very quickly post this one there as well. So hopefully your friends and family get to see it. And well, cool. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night and have a fantastic weekend.
Awesome.
All right, you too. Take care, Weston.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.